Welcome to Mindful Escape, the podcast that inspires you to live your best life. My name's Leighton Jewett and I am your host, and today we have Ryan on the show. This is a really unique episode because Ryan worked with corporate executives both before his spiritual awakening and after. He talks about the differences of how he behaved before and after, how he works with his clients before and after, and it's really insightful to hear how everything starts to align for him throughout his journey and how things are aligning for you. You're really going to love this episode, so listen closely and we'll jump straight in. Ryan, thanks for coming on to Mindful Escape. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, greetings, sir. First and foremost, thank you very much for being willing to hold this space and for talking about such a critical topic, which is freeing yourself from the corporate craziness. So for a long time, what I did was I was sort of a unseen out, like a covert trainer for CEOs, executives, different types of people. I do a lot of leadership training, a lot of communication training. So I worked in a lot of different corporate environments, and I saw how miserable so many people were. And there were a lot of people who I would be working with and talking to them about tapping into and accessing joy and positive psychology, and they'd only want to talk about their next wristwatch or their next sports car or their next promotion or this, and they were never happy. They were never ever actually fulfilled, and they didn't even accept that they weren't fulfilled. It was almost like they got used to not being fulfilled. It was like they had this void they had to deal with and survive and fill this endless thing that couldn't be filled. And I remember when I had my really deep spiritual awakening, I kind of got outside of it and I realized, man, that's a trap. There's nothing in there. I mean, not to say that, corporations can't have value. They most certainly can. But a lot of the things I've seen in the corporate experience is that many of us who've been in this for a while, it essentially absorbs your soul. It denudes the value of your life force. It takes you away from your true self. It takes you away from the innocence of your inner child. It takes you away from the joy that's your birthright. It takes you away from your creative powers. And for me personally, what I recognized was a lot of things that I thought mattered, like having a lot of money and the sports car and all this different stuff and looking cool. I don't care about that. I am a trillion times happier now. Sometimes I leave the house wearing like some simple clothing and nobody notices me. I'm perfectly okay with it because I go out into nature. I do something meaningful. I have a really amazing talk with somebody at a coffee shop. And the value of life improves exponentially when you recognize what the corporate structure offers you is entirely 3D. I mean, some corporations are a little higher frequency, right? But a lot of corporations is all about the money and the stuff that you can't take with you. It's like building the most fancy sandcastle possible and ignoring the fact that the tide's coming in. And there's no fulfillment because no matter what you build, it's going to break down to some extent. Maybe you can pass on a legacy to family, and maybe that's why you're focused on that stuff as a corporate individual. A lot of people I've worked with and talked to and have as clients who are in the corporate arena right now, they rationalize it. They rationalize their suffering because they're doing it for somebody else. But it takes away from your ability to be a healthy parent, healthy partner, healthy person in so many different ways. It takes away what you can share with your kids if you let this arena absorb your life force and your energy. And so I think it's a big part of what this talk is all about today. And we as individuals who've been able to transcend the corporate madness, we wanted to invite you to recognize that if we can do it, you absolutely can. And the invitation here, I think that we're both coming together to put on the table for you is just listen. Hey, you got support. You actually do. Like, this is one indication. If you're wondering if you can do this, and let this audio be a representation, a reminder that divine timing is a real thing. Synchronicities happen when you least expect it, whether you're right now sitting in traffic or if you're in your kitchen or if you're about to go into a meeting or if you're dreading Monday, whatever it may be. It's sometimes divine timing is perfect. When I say sometimes, I mean all the time, because synchronicities happen the more you make yourself ready for it. And something you said, sir, that I want to touch on one of your initial recordings, where you tapped on a 4-step process that I found to be brilliant. And you talked about the idea of stepping into stillness. And the idea, this 4 steps of stillness, being transparent, embracing the opportunities and being willing, all right, thresholds, willing to move through new doors, because sometimes there's actually better things available to you than you're comfortable with. See, a lot of us got comfortable being in pain, but sometimes we have a hard time accepting that when you step up into joy, it's like, oh my gosh, I can actually be happy. Yeah, you can. But it can be freaky too, because it's like, whoa, this is intense. You got to acclimate. And so if you look at the frequency of stillness, stillness is so moving so fast that it looks still. It's like a top that's spinning really, really, really fast. You ever seen a top spin really, really quick? And the faster it spins, the more center its energy is, the more still it looks. And what I've found with, if you look at the corporate experience and a lot of stuff that's thrown at you on a daily basis, and maybe you got a boss who's a special kind of boss. I got some clients who deal with that madness, or some coworkers who just seem they like their drama for reasons that make no sense to you, or whatever it may be. It all pulls you away from yourself. And so I think what we're going to try and accomplish in this short period of time is helping you really get back to you. So you have sort of an experiential remembrance that there is something within you that knows how to navigate this. Anyhow, sir, I've spoken for a moment. I wanted to hand the ball back to you.
No, amazing. That was a great introduction. And I love that you've just set up the conversation for today. And I guess what we should dive into first is a bit of your background. You were working with corporate companies before. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so my function basically was to come in and assist and strengthen leadership and to improve communication, all these different things. So I worked mostly as a sort of a hired gun, if that makes sense. And so I'd work in with some of the top tier leaders, and I would help them appreciate the ins and outs of influence. Right. I taught sequences of influence, taught sequences of that. I used hypnosis, NLP, these types of things. Taught the basics of personality, psychology, interpersonal, all that stuff, right? And the sad irony is, if you look at the corporate environment, a lot of people feel so disconnected that they actually need like a lot of lessons in this arena. But sometimes they forget that there's actually this connection piece. Sometimes it slips into just the mechanics of, you know, the various tactics that have available to them. So what I found when I was doing this work with everybody was there's a lot of good people who have sort of given up on feeling happy and free. And so one of the things that happens, I start integrating mind body work into what I was doing, because I had a background in personal training. So a lot of what happened too is I become sort of a covert personal trainer for some of these executives who had a lot of stress, and I would teach them principles of Pilates and yoga and Tai Chi and various forms of weight training and flexibility and all this stuff. And I'd see how much that could influence their emotional field, right? Emotional perception. You'd actually see from the beginning to the end the breakdown of stress and the personality, and how they would come in really tight, really taut, really easily agitated, easily triggered, and leave able to smile again to an extent. You know, and I would always gauge it because I would test them. I'd use a lot of humor to see if I could get everybody to like laugh. Because if someone has a hard time laughing, they're caught up in their ego too much, and that doesn't let you be creative, right? The ego's it's like your student. The ego's like the structure that you're supposed to be. Whereas my humble opinion is you're the awareness. Like, you're bigger. You're aware of the ego. It's like your student. And so what I would also do as time continued on working with these different individuals in this arena was try to integrate mindfulness, meditative processes to help them sort of just stop and calm their mind. Now, you know as well as I, the monkey mind doesn't always like the idea of calming down. And sometimes when you do sit down to calm it down, it gets really loud, really loud. It's like it rebels. It gets really intense. And what I always found was finding different ways to help people get past that particular threshold, because there is about a 5-minute window where just the mind really is like, no, I will not be still. And then you slip into the stillness. It's like, oh, this is nice. And watching the facial expressions on these individuals who'd fight with it in the beginning and then finally settle in. And obviously some would fall asleep, and you want to keep them as conscious as possible so they can enjoy the experience. But it helped me appreciate that anybody can tap into this. You know, it's kind of like the mindfulness of what you talk about here. It's so many people are caught in the personality patterns. They forget that there's more to them. And if you just pause for a microsecond, that microsecond is powerful, because every microsecond we're either becoming reactive or proactive, right? And so if you can just give yourself that pause for a second, take a breath, and just feel your body for a second, it gives you the ability to assess, do you follow the thoughts that are being really intrusive and loud, and probably based on your past and various subconscious, behavioral, all these different things, or You let yourself take another breath and be like, huh, what kind of life do I actually want to live? Become curious. And in that curiosity, it opens up possibilities. And so that's what I started to be. That's right before the time I had my spiritual awakening, which was pretty epic, and basically turned off that one life. And I went on this really deep journey for 7 years. Right towards the tail end, I was beginning to realize that everybody has access to it, no matter how I don't say far gone they are, because some people in the corporate arena, I mean, they've gone really far into what we call narcissism, or like they've really gone far into their ego construct. But even some of them, I saw like this little glimmer, like a chink in their ego armor, where they remembered the possibility of innocence, the possibility of actual joy, the possibility of actual peace through these meditative experiences combined with mind body work, combined with it's really quite wonderful, our resilience as human beings. No matter how much we've been through, our connection with a higher power. For me, it's a creator, whatever you want to call it, divine mother and father, God, universe, whatever the semantics are irrelevant. There's something of a organizational force in existence, and it's smarter than we give it credit for. Because no matter what battle armor you've had to put around your ego to protect it and survive childhood and life on earth, your inner self is so strong. It can emerge if you just pause for a second and give yourself a little bit of stillness. I mean, that's one of the core things I teach through that ally method I was mentioning before we clicked record. But yeah, I want to hand the ball back off to you, sir.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because I think for me, actually, one of the first books I read when I was going through my transition was The Chimp Paradox, which talks about that monkey brain. And it was a real eye opener for me, and just made me realize actually who is in control here. And then you continue going on that journey and then going into the mindfulness piece. And now I'm promoting mindfulness to people that follow me on social media. And so many people are struggling to get that concept of quietening the mind.
Yeah.
It just,
Look at
yeah.
Yeah, look at society. I mean, and here you are. You're given oceanic amounts of caffeine, right? It's always around you. You are given all these 30-second videos designed to get you in your cardinal mind. You are conditioned to be impatient. Like I believe there may be factors in the background, whether nefarious, whether it's just ego, that want people as reactive as possible, because you can influence reactive people, right? It's a military strategy. If you can get people to be reactive, you can control their conduct. And if you look at the corporate arena and you look at some of these personalities around, they feed on that reactivity. People who have a lot of absence with themselves, they want to drag some energy from you. All right, these are energy thieves. This is why you feel exhausted around some of your bosses or coworkers. You're not crazy. From a quantum physics level, from just a simple electron level, they are actually absorbing energy. And one way to think about that is think about what happens when you go out into the cold. If you're not insulated, your body's heat is absorbed by the cold. The cold electrons pull off the heat from your body. When you go into a work environment with tons and tons of thoughts, right? Because all these thoughts, they want to be thought. All these people want to think things. They've been watching stuff, and some people watch some really weird stuff. Some people had 18 cups of coffee, and their electromagnetic field is just like a chaos storm. And they're like, "Hey, look at me, give me your energy." And you're trying just to be a human being who does this thing that you already probably don't enjoy entirely, and now you've got this variable, which is even more exhausting. It really begs the question: how do I maintain my sanity in this? And I have one client of mine. She's brilliant. She's this high level accountant. We're talking about this, and one of the things I've been, because she's brilliant. So I'm sure the people listening to your show are very intelligent. That sounds like a compliment, and it is, but it's kind of a warning too, right? Because intelligence is a double-edged sword, right? The smarter you are, the more access you have to various thoughts. The monkey mind has like a legion of little monkeys, and here you are. You have this ability to stay above it, but one of the things that happens is the monkey mind wants to pull you in, and it recruits other monkey minds around you to try and pull you out of the center. Have you ever sat down to meditate and the phone rings, you get a text, or someone bangs on the door, this or that? Yeah, that's not your imagination either. Like That's one of those things you have to appreciate. That's a threshold to move through. You're allowed to have boundaries. And I think one of the things I see with a lot of the souls I work with, a lot of clients, a lot of us have trauma from childhood where we weren't allowed to have boundaries, or we had to prove we were lovable, or we had to achieve stuff to show that we were valuable. And a lot of us are reversing this, and it's tricky, but it's not impossible. But the biggest thing is actually just taking a second, like you had said, just your journey started with what? A book found its way to you. You found your way to a book. How'd that happen? And all the books in the world, how did it happen that there was this book that managed to get your attention at the right moment when you're ready for it, that had the right message for you, that had an impact that you were able to practice and implement in such a manner that now you share it with those who are seeking? I mean, think about that. Brings us right back to the beginning of this talk and talking about divine timing and synchronicity. These are variables that you can't really account for, but you can know that they're there, right? The frequency of faith is in total contrast to fear. A lot of people live in fear. Fear wants to think about everything, but it can't solve anything. Right? It's the old axiom, the devil's in the details, but what that really means is that endless thoughts keep you in endless traps. But if you pull back on the faith component, it's like, wait a second here. Where's the goodness? Where's the opening? It finds its way to you, like the book. And that's an example of it. And now through that one moment, look at this. You don't know how many souls you've influenced personally and how many souls they've influenced too, right? Because a person who's listening to our talk today may have kids, may have friends, may have this. And a piece of this conversation may remain with this amazing soul. And we don't know what ripples can happen. And the effort to help people be mindful, I think, is that it's a top-down thing, right? It's like the divine corporation, right? It's about lifting people up instead of keeping them down. It's like, hey, you're not in this alone. We got your back.
Yeah, I really feel that message. And what I'd like to jump onto next is some challenges, because I think it sounds like the people you're dealing with are going through this transition from high-powered jobs to becoming more aware of themselves and what brings them joy and happiness truly.
Mm-hmm.
What are the biggest challenges that your clients come up against, and how do you deal with those?
I'll say the biggest challenge my clients come up with is honestly worthiness. And it's ironic too, because you think about a lot of these power people, but this is the idea of the corporate arena and that kind of thing, is you're always trying to fill up the desire cup. Desire cannot be satiated. Desire by its nature is absent, it's lacking, it's desire. We call it, you should be passionate. What that means, you should be hungry. Well, hunger is never satiated. At a certain point, it's like one of my clients the other day, she'd done all these things and she's on this call. I literally had to raise my voice, like, calm down. And she's like, wait, don't talk to me like that. I'm like, well, take a breath. I don't want to. I'm like, really? Like, let's look at this. You don't want to take a breath. And so it became this moment of laughter, right? Because sometimes we let ourselves slip into seriousness because we're too smart. The mind gets too smart, too many things to figure out, too many things to do. Gotta prove something, gotta make something happen. All the subconscious patterns ruling us, trauma from way back when. And so I get her to take a breath and she busts out laughing. It was really, really quite refreshing, because if you can ever let yourself just laugh, it's one of the highest frequency things you can do for yourself. It helps balance out your entire neurophysiology. It's amazing what it does. Positive psychology explored this tremendously. It's amazing, but it helps neutralize the ego's hold over you. And the ego is based around the idea of unworthiness. It forms as a defense for your innocence. And so a lot of the clients who I work with, one of the things I see is they have these really brilliant minds that hold on to these problems where they got to prove something to somebody else for no real reason. And so what's happening with this brilliant accountant is her boss is being trying to find the right wording here. One of those people, right? And that you just really, really don't really enjoy in the corporate arena, but I get stuck with a little bit. The person that makes you kind of feel nauseous when you think about them or you see them coming, those types of personalities. And she was psychically arguing with this person after work. I'm sure we've all to some extent done this, right? But the idea of the worthiness is like, guess what? You don't have to do that. You don't have to give this guy your attention. You don't have to do anything. You can give this person minimal, right? You don't have to engage in the dialogue that much. And the idea of this was, you can't appease somebody who's in a constant state of deficit but it's up to you to have that line, that boundary. So that'd be the second component I would say that I work a lot of souls on is you're actually allowed to have boundaries. I think a lot of us have had our boundaries stripped away from childhood on. And the idea of being able to say no, or being able to honor your sovereignty and your individuality, these are such powerful, powerful gifts because the vampire archetype is the same as the Antichrist archetype, is the same as the Watik archetype. This archetype's whole premise is to absorb your energy and stop you from being an individual by permeating or penetrating your boundaries and pulling energy from you. The contrast that archetype is the Redeemer archetype. It's the idea of resurrection in life, not pushing religion, but just simply that resurrection, restoration, autonomy. And the idea of this is that you have the ability at any point to say enough is enough. And with that, you have the capacity to move through thresholds. This is something you've been talking about a lot too. You have to be willing to accept thresholds exist and change is there. And there is there's amount of difficulty in accepting your worth because it's outside of your comfort zone. A lot of us have become very comfortable in this specific pattern of personality, things we're supposed to. You're not that. You're the awareness of it. The fact that you're listening to this, you are the awareness. Your personality may have various stories it's throwing at this talk, at this dialogue, but you're the awareness who actually detects and knows the truth, right? You always know truth. The personality, though, has less rationalizations based on the past. And one of the things that's really intriguing I've always found is that when you give yourself a moment, right, that microsecond we talked about a second ago, there will always be a response. If you can just look at that response, something that you had said in one of your other videos is like, after you meditate, analyze your meditation, see what came up, like it's meta awareness. If you can just pause for a microsecond and look at the progression of actions and thoughts and all the proactive if you can just pause and do that, you come into awareness. You've done it. You are actually above it. Now you can actually strategically navigate that because by stepping into awareness, you instantly receive your worthiness because only the worthy step back into awareness. And from that place, now you can establish appropriate boundaries, what I will do, what I will not do. Right. And sometimes we have to establish boundaries ourselves. There's a part of us who wants to be lazy on the couch when we have to work out. Sometimes there's a part of us who won't let us stop working when we need to chill out and read a book or watch a movie and relax. And from there, a lot becomes possible. That's where you find the openings. That's where you know where these divine timing alignments are showing up for you. Because sometimes it shows up in inspiration. Like for instance, today when you found that book, right? You probably are doing something and somehow there was an inspiration. Hey, go here. And you somehow in a whole place, you find this book. I mean, look at the statistical improbability of that happening. And yet it happened perfectly. And look at this path you're on, this different trajectory. You're happy. Your life is more fulfilled because you are willing to be brave enough to be worthy. You're willing to be brave enough to have a boundary and say, hey, okay, something's going to change. I'm going to allow some change to come into my life. And next thing you know, there's this lesson that's giving you this remarkable clarity and you say yes to it and boom, here you are meeting intriguing people in different places and sharing a message that needs to be heard by the awesome soul who's listening to us right now.
Yeah.
So it's pretty wild. And I see that with a lot of us in this. I call it our tribe. I call us the Unseen Alliance. I think we're the ones who are breaking down the nonsensical nonsense and just sort of coming back to that authenticity, right? Going back into the truth, the higher measure of truth, not the ego's perceptions of truth, but actual truth, which is love, life, and light, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. And I think it's so hard for people to see when they're so absorbed in their life, their work, their careers. And I really love the point about worthiness because a lot of the people I speak to, when they say, or when they talk about the biggest struggles they had working in the corporate world, a lot of it comes to this like imposter syndrome or this feeling of not being enough. Yeah. And it's so great that you brought that up and linking that with setting boundaries, because I think feeling of not being enough just makes us put more pressure on ourselves to
Absolutely
need to do more or feel like we need to do more. And then it's that endless non-stop. And then going back to what you said before, more coffee, go harder.
Yeah, run. One of the analogies I always use with my clients is like, if you've climbed a mountain Stop fixating on the next mountain. Enjoy, take your bag off, have some lunch, look at the landscape and chill for a minute. Like let yourself enjoy the victory, because if you don't enjoy the victory, what's the point of any of this? It's like, well, I should climb another mountain. It's like, dude, you climbed 83 mountains this afternoon. Can you just chill for a second? No, it must get to 84. And this is the thing. Every second you have the ability to create a big and beautiful change in life. It may start off small, right? You find in this book. Seemed like it was a small little thing. Hey, why not do this? Now look at how much your life has evolved, right? It's because you own the worthiness, right? It's always there. It's always, the invitation is always there, which is really, really magnificent.
For yourself, I mean, it sounds like you did a really long journey of discovery and learning lessons along the way.
Yeah.
Could you pinpoint maybe one or two major lessons that you picked up that you can share with anyone listening?
Ooh, boy, that's a question. Never underestimate how much wisdom is within your soul. That you would be amazed at how much you already know. It would shock you to the point of tears of joy if you actually really grasped how much wisdom resides within your soul. That's your true self, right? The idea of the soul is this is who you are eternally, right? Your personality in this lifetime has changed a bunch, but the soul is the core essence of you. That's probably the axiom of awareness. And the more you tap into that, the more you're able to, one, avoid unnecessary problems, because you've learned a lot. You've learned a lot in this life. You don't have to repeat mistakes, but some of us think we do because we're trying to prove something to someone else. That's the past. That's trauma. That's narcissistic imprintment from toxic parents or people in your life. I mean, you're good. And that's number two, is accepting that. The process of accepting your worthiness is excruciatingly wonderful. And I say excruciatingly wonderful because it's intriguingly difficult to accept that life can be that good. And the difficulty is simply the idea of brushing off the stuff. It's almost like if you lived your whole life in a room filled with debris and nonsense and clutter and garbage, and you start clearing it out, it might seem weird because that's not what you're used to. It's better, but it doesn't make sense. It's like, I'm allowed to do this? Yeah, you actually are. I think a lot of us we get comfortable with certain things just sucking and just tolerate it and don't set boundaries against it because that's how it is, so to speak. According to who? That I found to be the most intriguing thing, is setting boundaries with people in my life, especially those who I love, like family, who are very toxic and they don't want to change and they want to take my energy. Was the hardest thing for me because I'm such a loyal dude. Like I'm a very loving and loyal guy. And having boundaries with people I care about has been the ultimate, the ultimate lesson of this lifetime. I mean, it's been a game changer. And every time, and I mean this, every time I set a boundary somewhere I didn't want to, something amazing would happen. Like I had set a boundary with somebody who I thought I was in love with. She was this fiery, passionate, narcissistic, bipolar, intense. I mean, I don't know what I was doing pursuing that. I was like, apparently I had to prove something. As soon as I set a boundary with this chaos being, the love of my life walks in the door like two months later. It was wild, but I had to actually say enough is enough and stop trying to rescue this unrescuable person. So I say those are two of the biggest ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I really resonate with change because people find it so hard to change. And I definitely found it hard to change. And one of my friends I speak to very regularly, he'll often ask me questions and he'll be like, but you can't do it like that, Leighton. It's not how it works. And I'm like, but why not?
Exactly.
Why can't we try it this way? And then
Yeah.
he's trying to come up with an argument of, well, actually, this is how it's always been done, or this is how it should be done. It's like, but according to who? Who made up these rules? And why
Exactly.
can't you change and try something new?
And that's the thing about the shoulds and the shouldn'ts. Who instilled them? Where'd they come from? Are they actually real, or are they figments of imagination? There is a story I heard years ago about this woman for Thanksgiving. She'd always cut the edges off her pot roast, right? And for years, she just would do that, didn't ask the question why. And one day her husband's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm supposed to do it this way. He's like, why? He's like, well, my mom would always do this. And so he's like, okay, I'm curious. Let's ask her. And she called her mom. She's like, hey, mom, why'd you cut the edges off the pot roast? It makes it better, right? She's like, oh, no, honey, it's because our oven was too small. And so for years, she was keeping this is a simple, ridiculous story, but she was keeping the simple should alive that served no actual purpose. Right. And this is one of the things I see with the concept of change is we get rigid in our personalities. There's a lot of ironically, I work with a lot of Aquariuses, not to say that everybody is defined by their zodiac or anything of that nature or their astrology, but the Aquarian mind is a formidable fortress. I respect it and I cherish it actually. But this is like a fortified reasoning field. And what I have found is using this as an example, sometimes the only way to allow yourself to change is to give yourself just a little bit of permission. Sometimes you can't give yourself a lot of permission. Sometimes meditating for 30 minutes is, why would you even try? If you can pull off 5 seconds, that was a victory. If you can just take 5 breaths, that was an epic victory. If you can do it for 21 days, you have just transformed yourself because you've established a habit. And so the idea of change is there's always an opening. But it is change, right? It's outside of the comfort zone. It's outside of the known. It's gonna be weird. It's supposed to be weird because it's unknown. It's you're going off on a voyage, metaphorically speaking. Your consciousness is expanding. But there are all these tools that show up. These magical helpers. It's like the hero's journey. Like if you agree to the journey, the next thing you know is you got a wizard knocking on the door saying, "Hey, here's some tools," and then some friends show up. And that's and like you said, the friend who comes in and says it's supposed to be this way. This is how it has to be. This is a specific. I mean, this is a reflection of his internal environment that he's trying to share with you. But ironically, what's happening is he's showing you his doubts so that they can break down on your faith field, right? It's like sometimes people who bring us this stuff is not because they're bringing us truth. It's because you're at a higher frequency of consciousness, not a cocky one, but like just humbly speaking. And they're handing you or bringing you these doubts, not because they're supposed to wear you down, but because they're supposed to shatter, not by force or intensity, but by your willingness, right? It's just willingness. It's all it is, willingness for new possibilities. And one of the things I always like to ask my clients to say is like, what if things can get even better? Right? Because one of my clients came on the call the other day and she's like, everything's terrible. The world's falling apart, politics and this and that. And I'm like, what if things can get better? And she's like, no. I'm like, just try it. I made her sing it as a lullaby for about 10 minutes. And she went from angry to weeping to giggling to super zened out. And if you try, just what if everything can get better? And it's in the part of us who's cynical and critical and all this stuff, that's fine. You don't have to lose that part. But I'm saying is it is an actual strategic question. What if things can get better? Because what that does is it puts you on a different tangent of consideration. And this is smallest of small steps. And from there, who knows? Next thing you know, you might feel the indication to go into the store and you happen across this book about monkeys.
Yeah.
And next thing you know is you're taming the monkey mind and helping others do it. You never know.
Yeah, the comfort zone is a fantastic topic, and it's one that comes up so often.
Oh, yeah.
And taking those tiny, like as small as you can imagine, steps just
Yeah.
outside that comfort zone and how much growth you can get from that is so powerful.
Yeah. Very true. Yeah. It's itty bitty. It doesn't have to be vast. A lot of us who are achievers, we sometimes forget that everything starts off small. Right. It's like you don't have to conquer the entire mountain today if you don't know the landscape. Sometimes the first thing to do is look at the mountain and then become curious about what's up there. And then, pack a lunch and take 3 steps and see how it feels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you had some advice, let's jump back to before you came into your awakening process, when you were
Sure.
in the corporate world. What
Mhm.
advice would you give yourself back then?
Oh, man, don't take this so seriously. I'm like, dude, it's like it's okay. Like this really doesn't matter all that much. I mean, first of all, I'll say I love you. I'd say I love you and I'd apologize. I'm like, bro, you took on too much. I'm sorry for the amount of nonsense you agreed to experience. And I probably give little dude a hug, be like, bro, it's gonna be okay. I know you've had to power will your way through a lot of stuff, but I can promise you life's gonna get so much better. And a lot of this, nonsense that you feel miserable about, but you're supposed to chase it because everyone said you're supposed to, because that's how it's supposed to be, because that's how you should do it, and this because that's always been you're supposed. That's going to break away, and you're going to discover that there's this oasis of awesome waiting for you. It's like, I know it seems too good to be true. I get it. I do. I understand. It seems too good to be true because looking at a world at a lower level of consciousness, you can't. It's like Einstein said, you can't solve a problem at the level of consciousness. The problem was identified. But if you can recognize that the problem is there, that you're not wanting to stay here, you've already begun the process of solving it. Like you're listening to this audio. I speak to the individual who's listening in. You're already on path. You're probably further along than you give yourself credit for. And that'd be the other piece I'd say to my younger self, like, look, dude, man, you're probably doing way better than you think you are. Because a lot of us with these overachiever and stuff from our past, like all my clients, I help them work through the trauma of their past and they reclaim their innocence. And they're amazed. All my clients report, like, I can't believe I get to be this happy. And it's my favorite statement to hear from me because that's a certain place where they cross the threshold. And that's the invitation, right? That's the invitation of this talk, the invitation of the two of us coming together and sharing this material with you. It's like, we get it truly. And at a certain point, you'll be looking back, and maybe this is one of those talks. Maybe this was the talk that catalyzed a sequence of events where a month, a year, 5 years from now, you're looking back like, oh my God, oh my goodness, oh my word. That was the moment I really, really, really broke free. Yeah. So that'd be the encouragement that I offer him. Just sort of, hey, there's a plan, right? It's gonna be okay. You can break free from the should matrix.
Yeah, one of the most powerful things about what you just said is that we come from a world where we're taught or shown that we shouldn't think that way. We shouldn't allow it to unfold. We have to hustle and we have to work hard and we have to make things happen.
Yeah. It's like the irony of planting a seed in the soil. If you dig up the seed to see if it's growing, there's a pretty good chance you're going to damage or even kill it. And the idea of trusting in the unseen, this is the reason why I call the work I do the Unseen Alliance, is there are factors, even if it's an atheist. I have clients of mine who started off as atheists and became more expansive as we talked. Not saying that's what, obviously everybody has to do what they got to do, but there is something that is very profoundly benevolent and organizational. And I think a lot of us have had a lot of trauma as kids, and we associate the dark parents, the dark mother, dark father, with this overarching thing, like that. Some of us had some tyrannical parents. Some of us had like the devouring parents. I mean, and what I have found is consistent with a lot of achievers is those of us who survive this, because this is stuff that's passed down. This is how it should be. You're supposed to fight, you're supposed to this, supposed to that, supposed to whatever. It's toxic. A lot of toxic conditioning is being broken down. I think that's what a lot of souls such as ours, a lot of people such as us, are working on with dispensing expansiveness and consciousness, is that a lot of these shoulds, they just don't belong. They never belonged, but they definitely don't belong anymore. Mm-hmm. And the problem is you're breaking down the shoulds in the face of others who will defend the shoulds. It's like that scene in The Matrix where one of the characters said, if you're not with us, you're one of them. And it's the idea of a person's instilled in the matrix of should, and you're speaking about getting free, they will inevitably mock you or attack you before they finally accept what you said. And this is one of the other things I'd offer too, is you don't always have to talk about your spiritual process, your consciousness process, your mindfulness process, whatever semantics feel best for you. It's a process and it's yours. You're allowed to do this. You don't even have to tell your spouse. You can give yourself moments in the car. Like one of the homework assignments I have for my really busy clients is they are required to give themselves 15 minutes in the car before they go home. And that's their sanctuary, or 15 minutes before they go to work, ideally both. And initially they tell me it's impossible. They don't have time, right? That's a big thing. Us achievers are like, oh, we don't have time. That's nonsense. You're wasting a lot of time through nervous energy. I promise you. If you actually paused, you'd be amazed at how much more you get done, because instead of chopping wood with a dull axe, you chop it with a super and a sharp axe. You move through it. Everything gets more efficient, more effective. But the tricky piece is being willing to give yourself that little bit of space, get it free of the comfort zone of shoulds, right? Because it's comfortable. Sometimes we're comfortable in pain. I mean, think about that. It's like, this is how it's supposed to be. Life sucks. According to whom? It's just the way it is. According to whom? It's how it's always been. According to whom? And once you ask that question, you become appreciative that that didn't come from somebody who's speaking truth.
Yeah.
It's the ego fallacy, or the whatever, all the words we use to describe just the stuff we got to transcend.
Yeah. And I think I just want to touch again on that point about spending 15 minutes in the car before you go home or before you go into the office. I found when I started meditating or including mindfulness into my day, I became so much more productive because I stopped trying to do 20 things at once, and I would start focusing on one thing at a time and not getting so distracted. So that was a massive help for me. So if someone hasn't got time for 5 minutes meditation, they should probably be doing 10.
very, very true. Oh man. And it gets easier too. Ironically, it really does.
Where can people find you online?
You have two choices. You can go to unseenalliance.com, which looks at some of the spiritual stuff. That's the blog. Or if you want an immediate, powerful trinity of meditations, simple, going to complex, unseenally.com. I'll teach you the ally method, which is it's a game changer. It's pretty incredible. Unseenally.com.
Amazing. Ryan, thanks so much for coming on today.
My honor and my privilege, sir. Thank you for the brilliant questions, and thank you for your quest and for your process of embracing your worth so that you can help others do it. I mean, it's really quite wonderful. So I'm very glad that we've connected.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to share all your stories.
Likewise, sir. I think we have some fun talks ahead of us too.
Yeah, absolutely. And there we have it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. The biggest takeaway for me was around worthiness, because so many guests have come on to Mindful Escape and talked about imposter syndrome, talked about stress, talked about the pressure that they put on themselves to make people appreciate them, make people accept them, and also the pressure they put on themselves to feel good enough and to feel accepted. If you've listened to this episode, hopefully you've now taken some value from that and understand that you are enough and you don't need to keep pushing yourself beyond what you're capable of, and it's time to start setting boundaries. Ryan has given us a special gift with a 5-minute meditation that you can listen to now. I'm going to tag it on to the end of this recording. And if you found value in this episode, obviously make sure you share it with a friend so they can find value in it as well. And I will see you again, same time next week.
All right, my friend. If you would just give yourself permission. That's it. That's the beginning place right here. You're in total control. You have total mastery of yourself right now. You can do whatever you want to, but I'm going to ask you to give yourself permission to just let yourself be at peace. That's it. Just the question of what would it be like if I was at peace? And so instantly what I like you to do is I want you to imagine the reality that you want to experience. Are you in the Caribbean, with the sun setting? Are you in a cabin someplace with family laughing? Is it Christmas time? Let yourself feel a future moment for just a second. As an achiever, sometimes we need to have a vision to help us feel fulfilled. And if you can, let yourself close your eyes and just kind of be with that. Obviously, if you're driving, don't do this, but let yourself feel that moment in time and space. And as you do, I'd like you to take a deep breath in. As you breathe in, imagine if you're breathing in this moment. What if you're actually stepping into a future? You're moving through time and space and you're breathing in this moment. And the cleverness of your mind, if it wants to analyze or assess, it's fine. That's just a part of you. That's your student. That's just your student. Your brilliance is a useful tool, but it's an aspect of you. You are the awareness. You are the calm. You are the stillness. You're the one who knows what to do. Your clever mind is doing its best to help you, but sometimes you have to remember your wisdom is deeper than just your cleverness. The cleverness is a powerful part of you. Honor that. Say, hey, I am grateful for how intelligent I am. And if you have a hard time receiving that compliment, say, you know what? I'm grateful that I've actually earned the right to say this. I've worked very hard. I'm grateful for how much I have put forth. I'm grateful for my work ethic. I'm grateful for this inner strength within me, even though I overlook it so often, because I've done that for a while, haven't I? And let yourself breathe in and say, you know what? What if I'm worthy of more joy? What if I'm worthy of more peace? And become really curious. And this next question is a tricky one, but what if I'm more worthy of love? And if there's a pushback, then you've proven to yourself the answer is a big yes. And if there isn't, still yes. What if I'm worthy of more love? It's just a curiosity. It's a possibility. It's a strategic question, assessing a higher level of possibility. What if I'm worthy of more love? And as you ask this question, allow yourself to take a deep breath in, settling deep within yourself, feeling all of your awareness settling into the center of your chest, relaxing your eyes. Your forehead relaxes, your powerful eyes relax. Your remarkable focus relaxes. You won't lose it. You're just simply sharpening the axe right now. You're amplifying your ability to get stuff done. The more you relax, the more ready you'll be. But you get this moment of calm, of centeredness. You get this moment of relaxed readiness. And feel that you have this sphere of energy around you and it begins to grow. It's just an imaginative exercise, of course. And you're still in this beautiful future reality, but it's easier for you to feel this bubble expanding around you. And as you allow it to expand, it becomes easier to breathe. And you allow yourself to just breathe, and the cleverness of the mind will try to come back in. It's okay. Hey, part of being intelligent is that you're just intelligent, but you're also aware too. The awareness is bigger. The intelligence wants to say, whatever, it's okay. But hey, what about that bubble getting bigger? I'm back to this question. What if I am loved more than I've thought? It's just a question. It's just a curiosity. And the part who might fight with that is the part who has to accept it. It's okay. And if I've triggered you, I apologize. That's not my intention. I want you to be happy and free and abundant and prosperous and live a meaningful and rich and purposeful life. But sometimes we have to move through a threshold, and the most complex threshold is the acceptance of your worthiness. What if I'm loved more than I thought? And the mind might ask, by who, by what, how come, why? It's a bigger question than that. This is a next level question. This is a higher level question. This is an expansive consciousness question. This is a divine timing, synchronicity, alignments, better than you thought were possible question. This is opening doors of possibility that are a little more wonderful than you anticipated as being possible kind of question. And take another deep breath and we'll ask it 3 more times. What if I'm loved more than I have thought? Because if you're loved, it would suggest you're worthy of receivership, wouldn't it? And worthy of that too. Worthy of worthiness. What if I am loved more than I thought? And there's a deep breath that fills you, and there's this expansiveness, is this infinite light lifts all the way above you and all the way below you, and you find yourself in this magnificent sort of tube of light, connecting the metaphor of heaven and earth, connecting the center of this universe and the heart of this beautiful planet. Spiritually, we'll say the center of the creator and the heart of Gaia, or just the center of the universe and the beautiful core of earth. But this big connection that you sit within, this bridge of matter and eternity. And take another deep breath in. What if I am loved more than I have thought? And there are these old friends, these allies, imaginative or real. Maybe you call them angels, maybe you call them ancestors, maybe it's just an energetic field of people through your past and your life, and maybe some from your future who are grateful for you, who see you, who respect you, who love you, whose lives have been touched by your efforts and your pursuit of excellence. But more than anything, their lives have improved by your willingness to embrace worth. Because as you've embraced your worthiness, it's made it more possible for them to. And that courage it took for you to create these steps forward is really quite remarkable. I'd like you to bring your hands over your heart center, if you're willing to, and just say 3 times, I love you. Allow yourself maybe even a smile a bit. Even if there's pushback, the pushback's fine. That's what you're healing. Good job. It takes a lot of courage to do this, my friend. You're good at epic achievership. You got that down pat. This is the difficult stuff. This is what's hard. This is the challenge. You could achieve all day long. This is working in the unknown. This is what is the greatest challenge. And you're doing it fluidly. I love you. I love you. Let's take a nice deep breath in. Huge breath in, full body breath on. Big. And let go a sigh. We'll do 2 more of those. Big breath in. Let go a sigh. Big breath in. Let go a sigh. And we're back in the present moment. I just want to say I honor you and thank you for giving yourself that space.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.